Well, it is the Autumn Carnival in both Melbourne and Sydney, and one of the most important people on the hub over the next few weeks will be Linton Chataway. Will be keeping an eye on all of the action in New South Wales. Also dabbles a bit in Victoria with the lay of the day, which pops up a few times for those that want to jump on the hub and check that out. But Linton, nice to speak to you, as it's not officially autumn in terms of the calendar yet, but the racing is firing up.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Darren. No, it's an exciting time of year, and it's really nice to have the quality horses back. But yeah, look, I'm keen to get into it. I think we can have some success. We generally do, but it's always best to not count our chickens before they hatch as well. I guess.
We've got obviously the Apollo this weekend, a race that felt like Winks won 11 times back in the day. But it is one of the Sydney features this weekend, amongst others, and we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But might be a silly question to start. But with the better caliber of horses coming back, do you find it is easier or harder to unpick these race meetings?
Yeah, look, and I think I mean my preference generally is the off-season racing. Look, I guess all the good horses are coming back, and I guess you touched on the Apollo Stakes this weekend. I think, like, generally, if I was looking at the race, I would really want to dive into Fangirl, but the question marks are, everyone's first up again. Have they come back like they did last prep? You saw what Fangirl did. I think she actually could have went close to winning the Cox Plate, against Romantic Warrior, and that horse has continued on overseas again with its good form. But has she come back as well as she should have? That's the biggest question. And I guess if you think she hasn't come back as well as she had, there's probably good value there for you in the race. Personally, I think I'd rather probably sit this race out and watch and learn for the upcoming races and just really think about, horses and their grand finals and their target races. So I think that's where you can find your most value during the Autumn Carnival, and yeah, that's where you're going to find your biggest edge is just knowing what horses are targeting which races, and is their grand final this weekend or is it later on?
In terms of forecasting potential autumn stars, do you have a couple in mind that you think will be horses that either emerge or horses that are already established that you feel will have a very strong few weeks?
Yeah, I think like I am keen to see Fangirl return. You know, based on what she did last prep. And I guess James McDonald's going to stick, and I think that's a good indicator that she's probably come back as well as ever. So look, I think she's in for a good prep in terms of other horses. I mean, Mr. Brightside impressed me on the weekend. Obviously, he's not New South Wales based, but I believe he may be coming up after the All Star Mile, and potentially, they might have a crack at the 2,000 meters Queen Elizabeth again, potentially after the Australia Cup if he's still going. But yeah, that's means he's going to be deeper into his prep. In terms of other horses coming through at the moment, look, I guess I'd rather probably see what's happening. After a couple of runs. Trials are a great indicator, and you can look into them as much as you want, but they can make lies off you as well. A horse could win a trial by 5 lengths, and it comes out and runs like a speedy squib. So, yeah, look, I am keen to sort of maybe watch this weekend, and then I'll probably have a bit more of a firmer opinion on who I'd like to follow moving into the Autumn Carnival.
Bit of the talk, I know it's Victoria in the last few days has been, I think, around Imperatrice saying, lazy at home and that type of thing. I guess there are some of those habits in horses where, they're better in race situations than they are at home, or better than they are in that. So I guess it is that difficult balancing act, and getting that exposure to trials is only part of it, because, as you say, some don't trial particularly well, some don't
Mm.
handle certain circumstances unless the pressure is on a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think Imperatriz is a tricky one
Mm.
because yeah, that trial was plain, and I think Mickey D actually came out and mentioned that trial was not her normal sort of standard. But again, I think she's had a recent track work at the Moonee Valley, and it's been well publicised that was excellent work. So I guess the stable's probably not going to race her if they didn't think she wasn't 100% right and ready to give this a shake. But in saying that, who knows, what the 3-year-old's Cylinder looked great to me. Like who knows how much he's improved. And he did a lot in his first couple of preps and was unlucky probably not to win a couple more races, again, that's probably a race that I'm not that keen to dive into. I'd rather watch it and then find out for the rest of the, autumn. So, yeah.
In terms of lay betting strategies, we often talk to our experts in terms of what goes into that. So what ultimately would lead you to pull the trigger? I mean, often we're against runners in races, but what makes you then go, well, I'm sufficiently against it to take it on?
Yeah, I guess one of the key things I'm actually looking for when I take on a runner is I'm looking at who's sort of in the market, who's under 10 to 1. But something I really like to take on is jockeys and trainers out of form. Their last 50 starts, I sort of like to look at compared to their career average. And, if they're striking well below that sort of standard, then I do try to take them on as much as I can. I just think it's a bit more of a safer play to me, because they're unlikely to turn their form around so quickly, in my opinion. But another key thing to look at there as well, I think I actually laid a horse yesterday and it was the favourite at $2.30. And look, it was a pretty poor race, but the trainer and jockey were both out of form. However, I probably should have looked at that a little bit closer and just realised that, the trainer and jockey had stuck with this horse a little bit. So, they were going close, like they were getting seconds and thirds throughout the prep. So yeah, it was probably, in hindsight now, obviously the horse won. It was probably a poor lay considering the facts that, trainer and jockey had been sticking with this horse. But yeah, I just like to look for little things where I think, it's not really a set-up job or the trainer and jockey don't combine that often and they're both out of form. But yeah, for me, that's probably a main one. The second factor I look for when laying a horse is where's it going to settle in the run? If I think the task is going to be too hard for it, then I'm happy to sort of take that on as well. And actually, I backed I laid 2 horses yesterday and they both bloody won. But there was a horse I took on. I think Tommy Berry was on it, and he's obviously riding really well at the moment. But my map was correct. Like it settled second last, but obviously there was a bit of speed on the race. It actually ended up suiting the horse, and it ended up winning. But normally I'm sort of happy to take those on, and over time, generally, I'm going to be in front from taking those horses on that map poorly.
Absolutely. And yeah, often it can be read right, but one thing just sort of changes and flips the whole thing. Just finally, as we look to this weekend, obviously we've got 3 Group 2s and a Group 3 in Sydney, the Apollo, the Light Fingers, you've got the Expressway, the Triscay as well. Is there anything at this stage, a couple of days out, that you like, even across the rest of the card, for punters at this stage?
Yeah. I haven't, I mean, I've looked a little bit deeply. I'll just have a quick look. Um, I mean, I had a sort of quick squiz. Look, I don't mind Buenos Noches. I think it's probably in its right race in terms of the weights and everything like that. And I like the fact that Nashra Willer, I think he's trialled it a couple of times, but it is sort of starting to get on the shorter side of things early in betting anyway. I think it's into $2.10 on the bookies, and you're looking at $2.26 on Betfair. Um, and I mean, King of Sparta might be poorly weighted here, but I mean, it's sort of got JMac and it's sort of fit and firing, and it sort of races well off these sorts of small breaks, like a month between runs, I've noticed. So that's probably my biggest concern. But I think, yeah, at the weights, Buenos Noches looks pretty good. Yeah, definitely probably a $2 chance in my opinion. So I'd be keen to sort of play in that space. And I know it's not in Sydney, but I've actually got a horse racing at Eagle Farm on the
Nice.
weekend in race 5, Antonito. So I've got a small share in him, but like he's probably going to jump favourite, and he should run well. The figure first up was good, and he was sort of holding the second place horse on the line. And actually, I think the horse that finished 6th or 5th against him last time actually came out yesterday at Doomben and won pretty impressively. And he's sort of that horse that won impressively yesterday was second to Antonito the whole way and running, and then he sort of dropped that horse and it fell back a bit. So I think the form's going to stack up, and I can't see him running poorly. So I think he's a good shout at that sort of $3 price at the moment, I think. So
That's a good tip for Eagle Farm. And as you said, Buenos Noches ran to within half a length and gave Imperatriz a decent shake during the back end of the spring as well, which is encouraging. If we move on to that one, obviously had been scratched at the barriers in a previous start, so they got a bit of retribution in terms of a strong performance. Linton, thank you for joining us. Good luck going forward. Hopefully we can check in again throughout the autumn.
thanks, Darren. Cheers, mate.
What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.